The following program contains names, places, and events that have been anonymized or fictionalized for the purposes of protection and safety. The following program is provided for entertainment purposes only, and any commentary from the hosts are strictly conjecture and should not be held as making any definitive statements about the truth or identity of any particular individuals or circumstances. If you or a loved one are involved in an abusive relationship, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 for support.
Happy Monday. Hello. Happy Dating Detectives Monday.
Happy Dating Detectives Day. What an exciting episode we have today. This is a big deal.
But wait, before we get into our episode, hello. There's a new podcast that you might want to listen to called The Medical Detectives.
Yay! It's coming out on Wednesday. So The Medical Detectives is coming from the same producer, Molly, who you've heard about.
Whoop.
As our producer, as us. And yeah, like you said, same vibe, but medical stories, medical malpractice cases, medical mystery, misdiagnoses. No, what is the plural of diagnosis?
I think it's diagnoses.
Diagnoses. All of those stories. And it's hosted by a doctor who's awesome. She's very cool. And a woman who is, you probably have seen her on Instagram. She's awesome, but she's had a lot of medical stuff throughout her life and has a lot of perspective on just dealing with the medical system for good and for bad. So if you're into these types of stories, or you have a story,
or if you're in the medical field, you might really enjoy it.
Yes. Or if you just like us, because it's going to be a similar energy, like girls getting together to learn and be supportive based on what they've been through. And all people, not just girlies. So that's a good transition to our guest. But
well,
Medical Detectives, January 8th, Wednesday.
Yes.
First episode.
Yeah, so please listen. Thank you so much for being here. And I just know that this is going to be another great podcast to really open up conversations on the medical side of things. So,
New
but
detectives.
yes, it is a really good transition, because our episode today, we have a male caller, because you know how we're always talking about, like, we want to hear men's stories. And we actually have one for you. And some of you, a lot of you, might know who this person is.
Yes.
By the way, this is a two-parter. Sorry, we don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to do. It's fine.
It was a lot. Yeah, no, it's a two-parter. But our guest today is a former bachelor. His name is Clayton. And we will say up front, Mackenzie and I we don't watch The Bachelor. I've seen some of it, but I definitely didn't watch Clayton's season.
I don't think I've ever seen any Bachelor or Bachelorette ever. And
I'm honestly impressed.
He actually started on The Bachelorette, and then he was asked to be the Bachelor in the immediate next season.
So he was the main guy, and all the girls were like there for him.
Yeah. And so the story that you're going to hear is directly from Clayton. He is choosing to identify himself. It's a public story. He is the only one that will be identified. Everyone else we're not going to identify, just for the sake of anonymity and just because that's what we choose to do. To kind of, we just choose to do things that way. We feel that's the most ethical thing to do. But this is his story, his opinions, his perspective. It is not ours. It is just, and we are totally unbiased. We've never seen it. I never seen it.
We're learning the story in real time. We're going in blind. We always do, but because we have a guest who is being public and not anonymous, it's a little different for us. So it's his point of view. But yeah, so he was on The Bachelor. The first part is definitely going to be him kind of talking about his experience on The Bachelor, how it led him to his dogfish
it's going to give a lot of context. I needed that too. If you're not a Bachelor person like we're not, then you're going to appreciate the context. And some of you are going to be like, oh my gosh, I remember that guy.
If you are a Bachelor person, he shares a lot. And you might know a little bit about his story, and he gives us a look at his side of things. So you'll learn something even if you've been following his case. But it was exciting to talk to Clayton because he has a very different perspective, being a man, a straight man. He's coming in. We just don't hear from a lot of men. They don't want to tell us their stories, and it's happening to them as much as it's happening to everybody else. So we're grateful for him for being so honest, and we'll debrief after.
Yeah. And I think you guys are really going to appreciate his story. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And don't forget also, if you have not joined the Patreon yet, The Patreon is $5 a month. You get 2 bonus episodes. And Hannah, what else do we do for the Patreon?
Oh, live streams, early access to merch, community stuff, and book club. We got a new book club going. Book month 3, Little Secrets is the book. So go get it and listen to it. I finished it in a day.
I finished it in a day too. And I couldn't put it down. It was a really good book. So Little Secrets, and it's a little dogfishy and very twisty turny.
And just a reminder, if we have any new listeners, we have made up some words on the Dating Detectives: dogfish and femtuition. If you're like, what are they talking about? Dogfish. Do you want to define dogfish?
Yeah. So dogfish is where, okay, so when you think of catfish, you think of someone who's like online, they're using someone else's picture to pretend to be someone they're not. A dogfish is someone who is who they say they are, but they're lying. They're lying about maybe having a secret family, or perhaps they're trying to commit fraud, or they're with you just to steal your money or something.
Scammers, but our
scammers, con men. Yeah. So that's a dogfish.
Femtuition is that gut feeling, but it's like the specific gut feeling that comes from the feminine experience.
But we truly feel like dudes can have it too.
Well, I think it spans all genders because we have both energies, and also like femme people just had to develop a very specific intuition based on their experience. So it's like basic evolution. Like femtuition keeps us alive, and all people can tap into it. So Clayton's got some.
Dogfish and femtuition. So there's your it's called the glossary, right? When you have to look up what the word mean in a certain
the double D glossary.
The double D glossary. I love it. Yeah. And also thank you for everybody who is writing into the show and emailing us. And I want you guys to know that we appreciate every story that you send to us. And I also want to let you know, sometimes like we get a whole lot of stories, and we're still fairly kind of a new podcast. So as we grow and we have like with the ads on the show, that kind of helps us. And then with the Patreon, it's going to, the more we monetize, the more we'll be able to hire hands to help us go through. But sometimes we get your story and we might not read it, or you might not get a response. We are not ignoring you. I promise. We adore you and we absolutely love you. Sometimes it's just maybe we haven't read it because there's so many or whatever. So I just want to let you know, thank you. Please keep sending them in. We really appreciate you putting yourself out there. So thank you so much. Are you ready to get into it and hear Clayton's story?
Let's do it. The most exciting bachelor in history. I just know that they say that a lot. They say things that are like really dramatic. They're like, this is the most dramatic episode you've ever seen.
Ever. Let's do it.
Hi. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Let's get into it. Clayton, take us away with your story. I'm dying to hear.
Well, okay. I assume since this is a dating detective show, although this wasn't a dating situation per se.
That's okay.
Yeah, it was so I guess the starting point, okay, if we were to go all the way from the beginning. So I moved out to Scottsdale, Arizona 4 years ago now. I just come off reality television. I was on The Bachelorette first. I was one of 30 contestants.
A little show, just a tiny little show called The Bachelorette.
The show that my mom loved growing up that I made her hate, but she loves it again now. She gets her son just ruined it for her. But no, she watches it. And she's like, I'm never going to watch this again. And the next season she watched.
Oh, yeah. She's like, well.
You're hooked. So I went on The Bachelorette, was one of 30 of the male contestants, and ended up, I suppose, placing 8th. Got to the final 8, got sent home, but then was asked to come back as The Bachelor. So then I dated 30 women. And that was pretty chaotic. I wasn't
How long
trying
after you were you were on The Bachelorette? Were you on The Bachelor? Was it the next season or something?
Yeah, I finished filming my season of The Bachelor before The Bachelorette even started airing.
Okay.
So I went back to back. Basically,
okay.
I got sent home, but like basically they asked me very shortly after, within a few days, like, do you want to be The Bachelor? So it was just like boom, boom. So I went back to back.
I was going to ask you what your, like, a brief synopsis of like your dating situation when you signed up for the show. Like, why did you sign up? Was it to be on TV or just for the fun, or was it to actually find love? Or
no, I was hesitant to go on at first. I got reached out to by Love Island was the first show that actually reached out to me.
Oh, okay.
Season 1 and I think 2. And they didn't ultimately, season 1, like I went through part of the interviews and then they backed off. And I ultimately was like, I don't know if I would do this. It's a little bit crazier than like what of a show than what I like. At the time I was in medical sales and I thought it was a little bit too wild for me. And so then I got reached out to by some holiday show. I can't remember the name of it. I don't think it had like one season. And they asked for like me and my brother to go on together. And I was like, hey, do you want to do this? And he's like, no, I don't want to do this. And so I made a comment to him. I said, you know, the only show that I would go on is The Bachelorette. Like if they reached out, then I would go on it. Well, then they did reach out and I told my brother, he's like, well, obviously you're going to go on it. And I was like, I don't know. He's like, dude, you literally said that you would go on that show if they reached out.
Wait, how do these networks know who you are?
They have recruiters and I think they have a list that like once you're on it, it gets passed around. It must, because they all reached out. I hadn't heard anything from anybody prior to that point. They all reached out within like a 6-month window. And so they told me that they found me off of a fitness hashtag. So I downloaded Instagram about like, I think 6 months before Love Island reached out. And the Bachelorette recruiters said, hey, we found you because you put a hashtag fitness.
Oh, you hadn't even applied for any reality shows? They just found you on social media all willy-nilly?
Yeah. No, I wasn't reaching out to them. They just found me on social media.
I love that because we found this podcast by just posting stuff on social. So everybody shoot your shot. You might end up on The Bachelor or a podcast.
Yeah. You never know when stuff comes back to either help you or haunt you. So
yeah, that's true. And then you were like, oh, that's cool. Hell yeah, I'll do it.
Well, so I was hesitant, but I followed through with it and they brought me on. And so I went on The Bachelorette thinking like, hey, I just don't want to get sent home night one because I was a people pleaser. So at the time, so I'm like, I don't want to get sent home night one. That'd be embarrassing. But I didn't get sent home night one. And then I thought, okay, anything beyond this point is just going to like get my face out there.
What a life.
But that was the Bachelor experience I went on. And that's a whole other blow up. Let's just say that I was, I guess, an unbiased opinion from what I've read online. I was a polarizing bachelor. So I
need to hear more. Okay, more than that. I need more now. Like,
okay, I'll give my opinion and then I'll give like what I read online's opinion. I felt I was too honest. Not for actually, you know, I won't even say for my own good. I'm very transparent, and I essentially fell in love with 3 women, was intimate with 2 of them, and then told all 3 of them that what happened.
So while you were the Bachelor?
Yes.
And then how many were left when you started, like, what'd you say, like being intimate with them or whatever?
So there's a thing called Fantasy Suites, and it's like in the final week of the show, and you go into the Fantasy Suites with 3 different women at 3 different times, of course, because that would be a completely different show.
That would be a different show.
And so you go in with one, and then the next, and then the third. And so I made some incorrect assumptions that everybody was on the same page as far as what happens in that week. And if there's anything that's, you know, that somebody isn't cool with, that maybe speak up before. But what happened was there was an individual that I ended up dating afterwards, that she wasn't okay with what I had done, being intimate and expressing feelings of love. And so she essentially said, hey, I can't move forward with you. And that at the time I was very upset and felt that was unfair. I questioned her, and she has a right to feel that way, I will say, and she knows this, but I disagreed. I will say nothing more than that. I disagreed with it. I thought it was, you know, I'm like, hey, this show, I mean, this should have been discussed ahead of time or brought up if it was an issue. And for me, I was in love with each of them for different things. And so I thought, okay, well, intimacy is a big part of it. If I'm going to get engaged at the end of the show, because that's what the show wants, is an engagement. I said, yeah, if I'm going to get engaged, then I got to make sure that I'm sexually compatible. That's a big factor for me. So I explored that. But my mistake, that's something I could have been better at, was asking more questions and double checking that everyone was on the same page. So in that regard, I could have been better. So basically, I asked her if she could stay and us talk through it, and maybe she could give me a chance and see past this and understand that I didn't do this, you know, for the sake of just like wanting to sleep with the other women, or I was just playing a game, but that I actually was really trying to be open to the whole experience and give everyone a fair shot. And so I said, hey, like, can we just look past this? This again, if this was in the real world, and, you know, I cheated or something, of course, break up with me. But like, this is different. And so ultimately she said, no, I don't want to do that. Then she leaves, essentially. I mean, I guess it looked like I sent her home, but she was done. And she was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so she leaves. And then, you know, the next day I'm kind of heartbroken, and I'm like, I don't know how to proceed. And so I ultimately decided to continue. I was like, well, these 2 women that I still have love for are here. And so let me try to move forward. Maybe everything happens for a reason, and I'm not supposed to date Susie. And so I moved forward, but then it was a couple days later that I just felt wrong. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, it's not fair to these women. Like, my heart is with her. And so I have to cut this off.
With Susie.
Yes. Yeah. And so
Are we saying names? I don't know if we're not saying.
I think she's allowed. We're allowed to say her name.
Yeah. So yes.
This is not what our episode is about. This is just Bachelor.
Yes. This is Bachelor. Yes. This is Bachelor. This has nothing to do with what you guys brought me on for.
But the context is good because I can't imagine that your dating life was normal after this. It's also interesting that you just didn't pick anybody really because technically on the show, did Susie come back?
No. So basically she came back. Susie came back. But then she I was the first Bachelor to be left alone or be rejected for the final roast. But then her and I dated after the show. So basically the show ends and then she DMs me after the show and is like, hey, now that we're out of that environment, I want to talk with you. And ultimately, we realized hey, this can work probably on the outside. Let's give it a shot. It was just a high pressure environment on the show. But here, let's try this. So then we started dating.
Okay. So this helps me understand a little bit of where you're at. So this happens first. So Bachelorette happens, then Bachelor happens. You guys, I am a private investigator, so I need you to listen to me when I tell you your information is out there all willy-nilly on the internet, on the World Wide Web for anybody to find. And if you've ever wondered how much of your personal data is out there, it's way more than you think. I'm talking your name, your contact info, social security number, home address, information about your family members. And what's happening is it's all being compiled by data brokers and it's sold online. So these data brokers, they make a profit off of your information. Your data is a commodity and anyone on the web can buy it. So this can lead to identity theft, harassment, the unwanted spam calls, whatever, and people looking you up that you don't want to look you up. So you can now protect your privacy with Delete Me. As a person who exists publicly and a private investigator, and I share my opinions online, I'm hyper aware of safety and security. I know how easy it is to get information. You can go straight to the Google machine, just go straight to your internet browser. It's easier than ever to find anything you want online. It's just all this information's hanging out there, and that can lead to real consequences. So I personally recommend and use Delete Me. It's a subscription service that removes your personal info from hundreds of data brokers. And you basically just sign up, you provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts will take it from there. They will send you a regular personalized privacy report. They'll show you what they found, where they found it, what they removed. And it's always working for you. Delete Me constantly monitors and removes the personal information you don't want on the internet. So Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's information from the data broker websites. So it's not as easy to obtain. Take control of your data. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, today get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/datingdetectives and use promo code TDD at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is go to joindeleteme.com/datingdetectives and enter code TDD at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/datingdetectives, code TDD.
Where was your head when you got out of The Bachelor and started dating again? Because that's where we meet you in a dating detective story, correct?
I was super, super cautious and hiding. I was so afraid to, first off, everything I did would be cast out there. So I started talking to one girl. I slid in her DMs and I ended up flying out to see her. And I go to a basketball game and I end up getting put up on the Jumbotron. And the next thing you know, it's online. And then it's Clayton's talking to so-and-so. And so my life, I realized I was I can't date in secrecy. But then I just kind of went back to my life before The Bachelor, as far as the way that I was dating, where I was just casually having fun. Of course, I was getting more attention now being The Bachelor. But my mistake was I wasn't being smarter. I clearly had changed as a person. I was now in the spotlight and I now carried some form of status that some people try to take advantage of. And I came off the show and I was I was a Bachelor, but I'm still Clayton, And so I kind of undermined it and was I'm no different. I'm not going to act any different. And I think that's what set me up for this scenario.
How did the public's perception of you kind of set you up for what happens next?
Since I was polarizing and people didn't like me as the Bachelor, people wanted to see me fail. And again, I saw this all online about people who were like, they wanted to see me, be irrelevant. They wanted to see me fail in life and not ever find love. I mean, I got thousands.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that, whether, show or not, it's not easy to just have people you don't know talking about.
Yeah, it was
you.
tough. I mean, the show really ultimately has been net positive, but of course I went to the darkest valleys before I made it there to the place I am today. But it was tough to hear people. I get death threats, people saying that they'd find me and put a bullet in my head. I had people tell me I was ugly, stupid, not deserving of love. I mean, I got called everything under the sun.
So did they dislike you mostly because they're like, he hurt these women?
Yes, because I hurt them. There was a lot of crying involved. People were upset that I hurt their feelings so badly. Some people said that I should have broken up with them separately as opposed to a group breakup, which again, my thought process was like, I broke up with them at the same time so that they could potentially console each other. I was like, maybe they'll support one another. Maybe that's just a guy's thinking, but that's what or just my thinking. But I mean, in hindsight, sure, I could have probably broken up with them separately. So I'm not going to say I was right.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, though. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
true.
I did what
everybody
I did.
makes a decision that they think is right for them. In
Also,
that
are you
moment.
like super isolated? Are you allowed to like phone a friend?
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a best girlfriend, you got to go to them before you break up.
Well, no, when my family came into the show after all that happened, like they came in the last couple of days and they were like, oh my gosh, if we could have had one phone call with you. I was like, I know. Like I come off the show and I'm dating Susie. We dated for 9 months. Susie and I break up.
Why did you break up?
We just weren't compatible.
Okay, so you
gave it a shot.
Went your separate ways. Okay.
On the outside of the show, it was like, hey, we don't have much in common. I can say this, like I've definitely worked on myself. I wasn't the best partner at the time for her. My ego was unchecked and wounded really badly from the way that I was perceived on TV. And so I was in defense mode at all points. So I didn't set the relationship up for success. And I think she tried the best she could, but I think she knew that I wasn't her person. So I get into real estate shortly after and I end up getting my license. And within like the first 2 weeks, I get a couple of hits from people being like, oh my gosh, I would love to work with you. And so I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, I guess, being the Bachelor is going to be beneficial. People are going to want to work with me. And so I get a DM from this girl on LinkedIn and she's like, hey, I was trying to reach out to her brokerage, but I can't get a hold of anybody. I would really like to work with you all.
This is 2 weeks after you start working as a real estate
It was like
agent?
within 2 or 3 weeks, of getting my license. Okay. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, awesome. And I'm super pumped. I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm going to get all these leads, being the Bachelor. Like now I'm going to start to be on the up and up, and turn this whole thing around. And so I send her my contact info and she starts texting me and she's flirting with me right away. But I was like, again, I was like, I used to work in the OR and the nurses would flirt with you all the time. And I was like, whatever, it's not a big deal. It's not like I'm like, I can handle a little bit of flirting. So I was keeping it professional. Well, one night I end up getting high. It's kind of my vice. Marijuana is my thing. Drinking's not. And so I got high one night and she sent me a provocative photo and that was,
Wait, had you guys met?
No.
Okay, so no showing in houses or anything. She just was like,
No.
hey, I'm looking for a house. And also, if this helps,
advance
commission.
Yes, the advance commission. So she sent it and took her shot. And unfortunately for me, I'd say my biggest vice sometimes I say is being horny. I have a high sex drive.
I feel like any sex drive is fine as long as you're safe and communicating and
yes. And so going back to the story, she comes over. And so I guess I have to get pretty descriptive here. So if you have to edit stuff out.
Wait, this night. Okay, wait. We're on the night where you've been.
The night of the hookup. Yes.
You've had a gummy or two.
Yes.
She sends a picture. You're like,
yes.
Come over.
To be available.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the first night you meet her in person.
Yes.
Okay.
She comes over, totally normal. Like there's nothing weird about her. She was super talkative, chatty, super personable. And so we start to hook up and I'll just say this. She performed oral on me once. We stop, we talk a little more. We go down, lay down in bed. And then she performs oral again a little later. And then I basically pass out and she runs to the bathroom the second time after completion. And I just go to sleep and that's that. Next day,
we spend the night?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next day. So, we did not have sex. Like it was just oral was performed twice. It's a very important part of the story.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're really bearing all.
Yeah. Well, I've already said this so much. I'm like, there is nothing. I don't hide anything. I have to be the one that has to, own up to it at the end of the day anyway. So So the next day I get up and instantly I'm not high anymore. I'm like, oh, that was such a mistake. That was unprofessional. We were seeing homes the next day. So I was like, gosh,
The two of you?
Yeah, we had scheduled to see a home. Again, it was stupid. I again, fully it was a mistake on my part, but I thought I don't know. I thought, okay, we hook up and go see homes. Would this be the first time that an agent's hooked up with their client? No. So
No,
again,
this sounds like half of Pornhub.
yeah, it's like, hey, oh, I'm the plumber here to fix your pipes.
Isn't it like, oh no, showing the house.
Yeah, and again, I can laugh about it now. So yeah, bad thing for me to do, sure, but I digress. So the next day we see homes, and then I'm like, hey, I pull her to my car. I was like, I need to talk to you. She's like, hey, what's up? So we get in the car, and I'm like, hey, last night, I'm so sorry. Like, that was wrong of me to do. She's like, no. I wanted to do that. And I was like, no, I know, but I crossed a boundary and it was unprofessional and that won't happen again. But if you'd like to work with another agent, I totally understand. I can put you in contact with one of my coworkers. And she was like, no, I want to work with you and only you. And I think you're great. And it doesn't bother me one bit what happened last night. In fact, I really liked it. She's like, but I was just wondering, like you say, you won't do it again. Like, I was thinking there was some good chemistry between us. Like, would you be open to dating? And I was like, no, to be honest with you, like, I don't have any interest. Like, again, I go, I'm sorry. I should have specified last night, like told you that I was not looking for anything serious. And I don't think I brought that up. And so I apologize. That was wrong. I feel bad if you feel led on. Like, I'm sorry. I'm normally very good about explaining up front. And I didn't necessarily do that yesterday. So I'm sorry. But no, like, this was a one-time thing. She then starts being like, getting agitated. And she's like, well, why don't you just give me a chance? Like, we have so much in common. And she's like, would you please? And she starts begging. And finally I said, hey, no means no. Stop asking me. You're starting to frustrate me. Like, I'm telling you no, and that's it.
I'm not interested.
Like, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Exactly. She starts crying and I'm like, oh gosh, like what? I just met you. Like, I'm kind of like, what is going on? I'm like, this is not normal. Like, nobody.
Were you like in an open house? No,
I was in my car at this point outside of an open house.
Okay.
So now she's crying.
She's crying, and then she just goes stone cold face, like stares at me and just goes, no, okay, I get it. She's like, have a good rest of your day.
Oh,
and then gets out of the car and closed the door. And I just remember I had this, the goosebumps. I was like, that felt really, really off. Like that.
Oh, your femtuition. We call that femtuition when like your goosies are like, some may right, this ain't right. I don't like it.
It felt dark. Like, it felt
ominous.
Dark. It was, when she got out, I was like, I don't know what that was, but like, that's not the end of it.
I don't like it.
It was not the end of it.
This ZocDoc ad is calling me out already. I'm reading the paper they sent and it says, excuses. When was the last time you needed to go to a doctor, but you pushed it off? And I was like, okay, at me. I've been pushing off going to the eye doctor. So I just went on ZocDoc, which I've been using for years, and I'm going to get an appointment because it's 2025 and I said I would do it in the new year, and here we are. So ZocDoc, what is it? It's amazing. It's a free app and a website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment right through the app. I kind of think of it like a dating app, but to find your perfect doctor. I'm not saying that you will date the doctor, but I'm not saying it. Like, you never know. But it's really easy. And I was really excited that we got to work with them because I've used them before. And all of my doctors, when I moved to Los Angeles, I found through ZocDoc. And that was when I had graduated college and was like trying to be a grown-up for the first time. And if I didn't have ZocDoc, I don't know if I would have gone to the doctor for the first 5 years of my adult life. It makes it really easy. You can schedule right there. There are reviews. You can save your doctors on your profile. It's cute. It's great. I love it. And like I said, I found my gynecologist that way. And I love that I could put in specifics if I wanted to see a woman specifically. You can really source what you want. I found my primary care doctor. I found my psychiatrist, and I got to find an eye doctor. All right, I'll do it. You can even get same-day appointments. Typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, you could get something, but sometimes it's same day. So it's pretty exciting. So guys, do it with me and stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/TDD to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/TDD, ZocDoc.com/TDD.
So she gets out of the car And then in the next couple of days, she sends me a text and she's like, hey, is there any way that you could see this working? And I was like, no, I'm sorry. Again, if you want to work with somebody else, I'll send you somebody else. She's like, no. Okay, fine. Let's just continue working together and buy a house here. And I was like, okay, like, do you promise to keep this cordial between us and friends only? And she's like, well, I mean, if it becomes something else, like, let's just keep it open. And I said, no. Like, it's not going to happen. Like,
no,
Yeah.
it's actually just a no thing.
she's like, well, can we just keep it open? And at the time I was just starting my new career. What we had signed for the contract, I would have made probably $25,000 to $30,000 in commission. So for me, I thought, well, I don't really want to lose this deal. Like, that was a little weird yesterday, but I'll just chalk it up as to like, she was emotional. Who knows what she's going through right now in life. So I'll just chalk that up as like, that was an oddity, and I'll give it another chance. Cause yeah, I mean, making $30,000 commission would be really nice right now. And that's why I gave her a little bit of leniency. And then I was like, no, I'm not interested, but okay, if you want to continue doing this deal and you want to work with me, fine. So then she tells me to write an offer. I write an offer and I send it over to her. I'm like, hey, let me know. We can go over this and review it. She sends it back right away. She's like, signed, which is like, it's like a 10-page document. And I'm like, hey,
You didn't read it?
do you want to go over this? Like, and she's like, no, I trust you. And I was like, but I think you should like look at this. This is a 10-page document. You're about to buy a house. And she's like, no, I feel good about everything. And so
It's fine.
And before we went under contract, I said, hey, just so like we're on the same page, like, you aren't expecting anything to come from this, right? Like, you are going to follow this deal all the way to the end and execute this deal, regardless of the fact that you want to date, correct? And
You
she was
texted
like,
that to her?
yes.
Smart. Okay.
And she was like, yeah, no, I won't back out, but I think you should just keep an open mind. And I said, sure, like, I'll keep an open mind. And at this point, I'm just saying, like, sure,
Yeah.
like,
You're just trying to like
Being nice.
move forward.
I'm like, let me close the deal and then just get out, right? Like, and so I was like, sure, like, I'll keep an open mind, but I'm just telling you, like, I don't think anything is going to change. And so then I write the offer, submit it. And I was like, okay, like, I submitted it. Like, please stick with this. She's like, I will. And then 3 hours later, she messages me a long message. Like, I just don't know if I can move forward with this deal if you're not going to give me a chance and date me.
Ew!
And she's like, so if you're not willing to, like, then I think I could just find another agent. And so I was like, hey, like, I submitted this offer. You're going to now make me look bad. Like, now you're messing with my job. So are you or are you not going to follow through? Because if you're not going to follow through, like, then I'm done. I'm not representing you and I'm going to have you work with somebody else. And she was like, well, I want to work with you and only you. I just don't know.
It depends on whether or not you will be living in the house with me.
Yes.
It's literally what she's asking.
Yes. So I said, you know what? I see where this is going. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm not working with you. Here's the list of people. Go ahead and work with them. And I'm done. She's like, no, please. Like, I'm sorry. I'll go through with the deal. And I said, no, I'm done. I made up my mind. Like, I don't want to work with you. And she was like, please, like, will you just like, and I said, no. And she's like, no. What's going on with the deals? I need you to look and give me an update because we submitted the offers. So they should be accepting them, right? Well, I hadn't sent them because I knew she was going to back out. So I told her I sent them, but my intuition was on once again. And so I said, I go, hey, I sent them, but I didn't. And so I waited. And then 3 hours later is when she messaged me. I was like, hey, I don't know if I can do this. And so I said, then I'm done working with you. And then she goes, oh, well, no. Like, can you check and see, what the update is? And I said, I haven't heard anything back yet, which wasn't a lie. I hadn't heard anything back because I didn't send anything. And I said, but hey, take the offer that we wrote down, the document, and you signed this. Like I said, take this and take it to another agent and hand it to them. It'll be a gift. They'll be so happy. You'll be like, hey, I was working with this agent. I'm no longer working with them. I have the offer. It's right here. Can you sign on this and then finish this transaction for me? And she's like, no, I only want to work with you. And I said, no, like, I'm not working with you. So goodbye. Take this to another agent. It's going to be the easiest money they've ever made in their life. And so she's like, please. And I just stopped responding. Well, then she ends up reaching out to these agents because I had submitted to them. So she finds the agents of the house and reaches out and says, hey, I'm just curious what's going on with these deals. I haven't heard anything from my agent yet. When he responded back, he said, I never received this offer. And so then she was like, wait. So she starts messaging me. She's like, you lied to me. She's like, you know that you can lose your license for this because you're not supposed to lie to your clients. And so she was like, I'm going to report you. And then I was like, I was like, you know what? Hey, I'm blocking you. Because I was like, she kept blowing up my phone. I said, I'm done. And so I blocked her. But the last thing she said before I blocked her was, okay, I'll be honest with you. The real reason why I've been stressing out is because after we hooked up, the next day I was feeling a little off. And in the coming days, like I've been feeling a little odd. And like
the next day?
She's like, I took this fertility test. She's like, and I'm fertile right now. Like I'm in my fertile window. She's like, so when we hooked up, I'm just concerned that maybe potentially I could have gotten pregnant. And I just sent back to her like a laughing emoji and was like, you're ridiculous. Like, I'm done. I'm blocking you right now. Goodbye. And so I blocked her. And then 4 days later, I got a photo of a pregnancy test and it was positive. And she's like, I'm pregnant.
In 4 days?
Yeah, wait.
No. 4 days from that moment. So this was like from when I blocked her. So like this was it was day 11 from the day that we hooked up. So basically we saw homes in the coming days after like the hookup stage. Like it was like going 4 or 5 days, 6 days. I blocked her on like the 7th or 8th day. And then she sends me a message 3 or 4 days later. And I went straight to my mom and was like, this is even possible. But I Googled it because I called her out. My first thought,
I wasn't Google if you can get pregnant by swallowing?
No. So here was the thing. So I go, you're ridiculous. We didn't have sex. And she's like, no, but what happened was I felt your fluid down there because whenever I gave you oral from the first time to the second time, you had leftover fluid. And so that leftover fluid, when we were grinding on each other, there was no penetration, but when we were grinding on each other, that's when like
it
the
found
fluid
its
got
way.
Yeah. And I was like, no, it didn't. But she's like, yes, it did. I'm pregnant. I don't know what to tell you. And she's like, look, and she sends me the test. And so I Google it.
Do people know that fast if they're
Well, so I Googled it. And I was like, what's the earliest that you can find out that you're pregnant? And online, it was like the earliest you could find out 10 days after your period or something.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I guess she could technically have found out right now. But I was still like, there's no way. But what I thought was just the second time when I mentioned that she ran to the bathroom right afterwards, I thought she ran to the bathroom, spit it in her hand and pushed it up her. Like I didn't have sex with her, but she got me. Like she ran to the bathroom right afterwards. Like that's why she did. And so I couldn't, at that point, I'm like, well, I suppose there's a chance she could be pregnant. I can't fully prove it that she's not. And so
what did you do?
I was like, I don't believe you, but what are you going to do about it? Because ultimately I'm pro-choice. And so I said like, hey, like, I'm not going to tell you what to do one way or another, but I don't want to have this child with you. And so she was like, well, I've been thinking about it and here's what I want to do. If you date me for 2 weeks, then I will have an abortion. But if you don't date me, I'm going to have the child.
What? Oh my God. Is this in writing? Did you have that text?
Oh yeah. Yes. Text, emails. I have everything documented. So she says that and I'm like, excuse me? I was like, that is not the right reason to keep a child. Like if you want to keep the child, then do it. But don't keep a child for that reason. Like that's ridiculous. And she was like, that's the way I feel. You should give me a chance. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. I figured, hey, there's a voice of reason somewhere. And the voice of reason's not within her. I've tried to talk her through it. She's completely lost. She's gone. Like there's no reasoning with this woman. And so I said, okay, then let me talk to somebody that she loves and cares about that can talk some sense into her. Since I can't, obviously the next person I thought about was her parents. And I was like, can I talk to your mom? And so she's like, for what? I said, I want to talk to your mom, thinking like, hey, I can reason with her mom. Her mom's going to be like,
your mother.
I assumed her mom would be like, my daughter said, what? Okay, I'll talk to her. I'm so sorry. But instead, what I got was I get on the phone with her mother and I tell her what all happened. And she's like, yeah, I'm aware. And I said, so anyways, like your daughter's basically saying that she's going to have an abortion if I date her, but if I don't, she's going to have the child. I said, I think you could probably agree with me. That's a little wrong, right? Like she should either have the child because she wants to or doesn't, but don't settle on whether or not I want to date her.
Yeah.
And so I'm waiting for her response to be like, yeah, that's wild. I'll talk to her. Instead, she goes, well, you got my daughter pregnant. And she's a really great girl. And I think honestly, you should give her a chance because you might find out you like her. I was really taken aback. She's like, well, I don't think you've given her a fair chance. And honestly, it's disappointing because you got her pregnant. So I think you should give her a chance. And so I'm pissed. And I just go, all right, I see where this is going. Goodbye. And I hung up. So that happens, that phone call. I'm like, okay, well, that was a dud conversation. And so then from there, she's like, I'll order pills. So then she's like saying she's going to order pills and basically, but I have to date her. Again,
like
I'll take the pills. Yes.
Okay.
And she was like, hey, she drops it from, okay, don't date me for 2 weeks, just 1 week. And if you date me, I'll take the pills. And if you don't, I'm having this. I'm going to throw the pills out. So I ended up telling her like, hey, can you come over and talk about it? At this point, I'm trying to catch her on her BS. So she's like, why? And I was like, just because I want to talk to you. Let's just hash this out like adults. So she comes over. I buy the pregnancy test. Right when she walks in, she's like, I'm glad that you invited me over. I don't know if you want to know this. She's like, but I brought a pregnancy test for you to see that I just took before I came here. And so she pulls it out and shows me. And I was like, okay, that's great. But I also have one for myself. So like, I want you to pee on this and thinking like this was going to be it. I was going to catch her in her lies and it's over. And she goes, okay. She grabs the test and I'm like, okay. And so she's like, goes in the bathroom and I'm like, okay, hey, I said, can I just see like you like show me your pockets and like,
that's like a drug test. Like you ain't coming up in here with some fake ass pee.
And so she pees and she walks out and it sits there and they're waiting. And sure enough, it's like the double line shows up. And I'm like, shit.
Oh my gosh.
And she's rubbing my back.
Did you think maybe she slept with other people? You're like,
my mind was racing at this point. Yes. So I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't believe you. I will keep your phone unblocked. I felt bad. I'm sorry. I guess you're telling the truth. Like in that moment, I felt convinced enough to be like, I guess she's not lying. And even if she did trap me, she is pregnant. So like, even if she trapped you, Clayton, like this could be your child. And now you man up.
I don't like it.
And so she's rubbed my back, consoling me. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like I just didn't think it was possible. And so I said, I will respond to your text messages now and keep this chain of communication open. And so that night ends. The next day I wake up and I'm just like, I feel off still. My intuition is like, no, she's not pregnant. She's not pregnant with your child. And so I'm like,
something is wrong.
Something was the
your
sirens
intuition was burning.
Yeah. So something was off. And so I messaged her back and I said, hey, I thought about it from last night's conversation. And like, I'm sorry, I still don't believe you. And so I'm going to need to see an ultrasound. And I mean, of course, that did not set right with her.
She was like,
lose
her mind?
Are you kidding me? Like, you literally believed me last night. What changed? And I was like, I just don't believe you. I said, it's just not possible. Like, you probably got pregnant from somebody else. She's like, I've only been with you. I haven't been with anybody for the last year and a half.
And I haven't even been with you.
Yeah, really.
And so she's claiming like, yeah, I've not been with anybody besides you in the last year and a half. And so she's like, it's you. And I said, okay, well, again, I'm going to cut off communication until you show me an ultrasound. And so she was like, that's ridiculous. I can't go anyways until 9 weeks. So you're going to have to wait until then or whatever. I think 6 weeks is the earliest you can go for an ultrasound. Mm-hmm. And so I go, okay, so we're going to wait 6 weeks then. Until then, stop sending me messages. So I block her and I said, send me an email whenever you have the ultrasound. And so finally we get to the point where it's like 6 weeks. And I said, hey, are you scheduling this? And she's like, I'm going to schedule it. Yeah. And I said, okay, schedule it. I said, and I want you to FaceTime me when you're there. I said, because I want to talk to the doctor. I don't believe that you won't give me a fake ultrasound. And she was like, that's ridiculous. But fine, I'll do it. And I'll invite your family. And so she's like messaging my family and saying like, I want you to come, to the ultrasound. And so, of course she's like,
who in your family? What do you mean your family?
She was reaching out to my parents. She found both of my parents' emails online. And then she was also emailing all of these mental health organizations that I worked with and was like, Clayton claims to be a mental health advocate, but my mental health doesn't matter to him. He's not supporting me since he's impregnated me. And so she was trying to destroy my career.
What did your family think?
My family was like, hey, it's very unlikely, but she's apparently pregnant. So my mom and dad were like, if you did, like, then you'll have to answer to it in 9 months. My dad, gave me advice that really stuck with me. I was laying in my bed like every day. I couldn't work. I couldn't function. I was just like, my life is ruined. She was threatening to go public. I was like, if this goes public, people already hate me. This is going to destroy my whole reputation. And so I like couldn't function. I'd wake up at, my normal time, 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever, but I couldn't get out of bed. I'd lay there and stare at the ceiling some days and scroll on my phone and do the bare minimum to make money to pay my rent, but wasn't doing anything more because I didn't have the energy for it. Because any moment that I wasn't busy, I would just, my mind would trail off into, I'm about to have a kid with this woman that's going to make my life a living hell. And so I would just spend days staring up at the ceiling. And on the weekends, I would just smoke, get high. Because when I got high, my brain would slow down and I didn't want to think. I was trying to escape as much as I could from my reality, which was a living hell at that point.
Oh my God.
Well, one day my dad was like, Clayton, at the end of the day, if she's pregnant, she's pregnant and you can't do anything for 9 months. So live your life to the fullest until that 9 month, 9th month arrives. And then if you become a father, then you will have to become a father. Mm-hmm. But until that point, like you sitting here laying in bed, it's not going to do anything.
Right.
And so I was like, okay. So, I start like going on and and back to doing work and stuff. And she's still messaging me every day and I'm blocking her emails and she sends me from a different address and I block that one. And she ends up sending me from 13 different phone numbers and like 4 different emails over the course of the time that I was blocking her.
Oh my God.
That's wild.
So she basically gets to the point of the ultrasound and then she cancels and she's like, I canceled the appointment because I was afraid you're going to show up and potentially hurt me. So I don't want you to know when I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. What? And I was like, no, that's BS. So then send back to her, you're full of shit. We're done here. And she's like, no, I'm going to go public. And she starts threatening to go public. So she gets lawyered up. She gets a lawyer. This lawyer reaches out to me and is like, you need to talk to her. And I was like, no, I don't. I said, I don't need to do anything. I said, she needs to get me an ultrasound. And so then they go, well, she's not going to send it to you, but I can show it to you over Zoom. And so she goes to show it to me over Zoom. And I look at it and I'm like, there's 2 sacks. She's like, yeah, there's twins. And I'm like, what?
Oh, no.
And she had been mentioning up until this point, like in emails, she was sending me emails that were like, I had them blocked and it was going into a block folder. And I was reading them every other day or every few days.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, hey, like the twin gene runs in my family. So like, there's just so you know, there's a chance that it could be twins. So then all of a sudden on the ultrasound where I see twins, so now it's twins. And I'm like, okay, so I see the ultrasound and I take a screenshot of it so I can have it for my records. The ultrasound looked fake. I look at it, I'm like, this isn't a real ultrasound. I send it to a radiologist, people that I know, and I'm like, is this real? And they're like, that looks fake. But it's hard to say, but it doesn't look real. And I was like, okay, that makes me feel a little better.
I would have wanted to like plug it into the Google reverse image.
I did.
You did?
I did, and nothing came up. So that was like, well, damn it, like nothing's coming up. So that's not good, because if she pulled it from the internet, then it would have popped up.
Right.
But I still was like, this looks fake and really poorly photoshopped. She then serves me papers. So she gets a process server. At first I was evading them because I'm like, I'm getting text from a process server saying that I have papers to serve you. I was like, what are they? And he's like, it's for a parenting plan. I'm like, I'm not a dad. This is a BS thing. And he's like, well, I have to serve you these papers and you are legally required to accept them. And so at the time he's trying to serve me papers. I said, dude, I'm not even in Arizona. I'm in Miami right now. And so I said, I can't even accept these papers that you're trying to serve me right now. So lo and behold, what happens? I get a text from another process server saying like, hey, I'm in Miami and I'm here to serve you papers. So I don't end up responding. And then I get an email from this process server saying that they tried to deliver the papers to 2 separate locations, and the recipients' names of the houses that the papers were tried to be served at. And one of them was a girl that I talked about when I went and flew out to see her in Kentucky. She lived in Miami, so she decided to send her papers thinking that I was visiting her.
Oh, wow.
He was trying to get those papers served thinking like he's probably at her house.
Oh
and
my God.
Like, he's going to get these papers and then have to explain to her what's going on.
How would she have known that? So did you talk to her about?
No, she stalks.
It was online.
She Googles and looks up my entire life. And so she ends up trying to serve that girl papers. Well, then the other one she tried to serve was a girl that I said on one podcast, it was a Bachelor podcast. They said, if you were to go on Paradise to the beach, like who would you be interested in? And I was like, oh, I'd be interested in this girl. She seems sweet.
And Paradise is like when all the ex-Bachelor people go back and hang out.
Ex-Bachelor people go, yes, and all like go on the show and they date. And it's like, there's no like lead.
It's like Love Island for the Bachelor people.
It's Love Island, yeah. And so I make that comment only on that podcast. She ends up seeing this one podcast and then ends up trying to serve papers at her house. I never had a conversation with this girl. I've never talked to her in person ever. So I'm like,
what a way to ask someone out.
I've never even asked her like if she didn't get the papers. Apparently she wasn't home or whatever. So she didn't get the papers. So I get back in town and it was like a couple of days later and I open my elevator. I'm like coming back from the gym and boom, 2 police officers standing right at the elevator. And the guy, they look at me and go, hello. And then they go like to walk by me. And the one guy goes, oh, you're the guy we're trying to get a hold of. He's like, are you Clayton? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, we have papers to serve. I was like, okay. So I take the papers. And so I'm reading them and it's a parenting plan. Basically, it's like outlining when we're supposed to take care of the kids, what holidays she'll have the kids and what holidays I'll have the kids. I read it and I'm like, this is so stupid. There's no kids. And so I'm like looking at it and I'm like, I don't have to do anything with this. I'm just going to throw them away. But I Googled it first. I was like, do you have to go respond? Because the processor told me that I had to respond in court. And so I Google it and it's like, you have to respond. Otherwise, they'll submit a default judgment. And if you don't show up, they're going to assume that you are the one that's in the wrong. So I was like, shit, well, I got to talk to a lawyer then. I don't know how to file this. So I talked to a lawyer and they're like, yeah, we can represent you. I said, no, I don't want you to represent me. Like, I just bought a house. I'm cash poor. I don't have the money. Can you guys just help me file this one thing? They're like, yeah, sure. We'll help you file it. It's going to cost you $500 for the one-time filing, but we're not going to do any more documents beyond that. I was like, that's fine. This should be the only one. So
famous last words.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of shit that I say that comes back to bite me. So I end up going into the court and submitting it. And they're like, so you're denying this? I said, yes. They go, on what grounds? I said, on the grounds that there's no children. And it was a male judge. He looks at me. He goes, are you messing with me? I said, no. He's like, what do you mean there's no kids? He goes, you mean they haven't been born yet? I said, no, there's no children at all. They don't exist. She's not pregnant. And so he's like, okay, well, we're going to submit this to the next court. So it's just sitting in family court. And then she starts filing motions for us to have a resolution. So we go in to do this resolution and they're like, well, how are you guys going to, the court's like, how are you guys going to come to a resolution here? I said, I need her to do a paternity test. That's what I want, a paternity test. And the court person was like, well, will you do that? She's like, yeah, I will. I said, okay, then we're done, right? And then she goes, well, I'll do it, but like, again, like like he needs to date me for a week. I was like, oh my gosh.
God.
And I was like, we're
She
going.
can't like legally
She said
put
that to a
in.
judge?
Yeah. Well, it was a what do they call it? Like not the judge, but like
the mediator.
Mediator. And I said, I'm not doing that. She's like, well, okay, what if he just meets up with me? I was like, I am not going to meet up with her in person. I do not trust her. I said, she's going to take this test and that's the only thing. And so ultimately she's like, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. So that ends the mediation. That resolution dies, doesn't get anywhere. So then she's sending me messages like, if you're not going to meet with me, then I have no other choice but to go public. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, no. I was like, just do the paternity test. If I'm the father, then I will be there for the delivery of this child. I'm not going to support you as in this is never going to work between you and I. And she's like, well, then I'm going to go public. And so
that's great for the child's future.
I know,
if
right?
this child exists. What a thoughtful lady.
Yeah. So she goes public. I get reached out to by the Sun and a couple other news articles or sites. And the Sun ultimately was like, hey, look, she's talking to multiple people. I was like, I know, I keep getting contacted. And they're like, so listen, like it's going to get out. So, and I'll never forget what this person said. And they were right. So I'll give them their flowers. They said, you know what? Maybe this going public will be the best thing that happened to you. And I said, I don't see how in the hell that would ever be the case, but fine. I said, you know what? At the end of the day, you're not, I was mad at her. And I said, at the end of the day, you're going to do whatever you do because you don't care about me as a human. You just want to write an interesting story. And she was like, if that's what you feel, I understand, but it's my job. And she wasn't an ass about it. I almost made it seem she was just like, she's leaking it out.
Happening.
Yeah.
So we're gonna release it. And
if I don't, somebody else will. Yeah.
Yes. And so they release it. And this was right when I was hosting this reality pickleball TV show, a local show. So she timed it to release on my first day of my first hosting gig ever. Because she wanted to try to F with my head. So she launches it on my first day. Like I'm an hour into filming, just having met the directors and all that and the cast and boom, all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up and it's out there. I call a meeting with the directors and I'm like, I got to talk to you guys right now. And so I pull them into a room and I'm like, tell them everything that I told you guys. And I said, they go, okay, can you give us 5 minutes? I step out. I'm like, I'm going to get fired. This is exactly what she wants. They're going to fire me. And so after like 10 minutes, they bring me back in. They go, you promise everything you're telling us is true, that she's not pregnant. I said, I swear to you, she's making it up. And they go, okay. They go, and you didn't put your hands on her or like were abusive in any way? I said, no, I wasn't. They go, okay. They go, well, then we're going to stand by you. We believe you.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So they were awesome for that. And so I start filming the show. It's like a week long and nonetheless, it's blowing up online. But after it goes public, not even 24 hours later, I get a DM. And the DM said, hey, you need to look into this court case. You're not the only one.
From who? Who said it?
It was from the now fiance of the victim before me.
What?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so this is what she does.
So I am like blown away. And I am just shocked. And I'm like, what? So she gives me a court case number. So I go in the next day and it's publicly accessible. So I pull all the files and I'm reading the screenshot of the text messages and it's like verbatim. She's using the same words. It's the same story. She claims she got pregnant off of a one night stand and she's pregnant with twins. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this girl has done this before. But as I'm looking into the court docs and reading in that doc, I see another name. And I'm like, what?
Oh, no.
And there's a guy before him. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm interested to hear what our listeners with bachelor knowledge or bachelor
experience
have to say. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, we're going to dive in more in part 2. And after part 2, we will do a more thorough dogfish debrief. oh my God, something just fell off my wall. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I've been freaked out.
I am, but it's okay because nobody is framing me for pregnancy. So it could be worse.
Do you imagine?
What was I talking about? Okay. After part 2, we're going to do a more extensive debrief on everything. But today I do want to say something about the concept of the perfect victim. And if people don't know what that is, it's coming up a lot right now because of Blake Lively. To update, Blake Lively, the actress, is accusing her director of the movie It Ends With Us, who is also the star, Justin Baldoni, who was in Jane the Virgin, if you watch that, which was so good. Anyway, so she's saying that he did really inappropriate things on set, and people are kind of saying, yeah, well, she's a bitch. Like, she sucks. So it does, you know what I mean? And that the idea of the perfect victim is that like somebody has to be perfect angel in order to have a credible claim, which is not true. And I think it applies to not only Clayton's relationship to Bachelor fandom, but also many people who have come on our show, many people who come forward, and nobody's perfect. We all have skeletons. We all, if you're mean, that doesn't mean you deserve to be abused or anything. And it also is kind of just invalidating to the person. It can also really deter people from coming forward if they're afraid to share something that they have done.
That's so true.
Is going to be looked down upon. It's an interesting thing. So anyway, that concept was coming to my brain as he talked about how many people don't like him based on the show. Because we'll be honest with you, like, we know that some of you don't like Clayton. Like, we know that you watched the show, and he knows that people watched the show and really didn't like his behavior. And we're not like here to say whether or not that was valid or not. Like, what I love this conversation just because I think it comes up more than just right now. We've had a story come on where the woman was cheating, and then what happened to her was absolutely devastating and terrible. And there were people that were like, she was cheating. I don't care. And it's like, who are we to throw stones, first of all? And second of all, that's not the point. Like, yes, of course you can have your opinions like, oh, she shouldn't have cheated. Maybe. But the illegal stuff and the abuse stuff, nobody deserves it, no matter what.
Right.
Nobody deserves any of the treatment, no matter what. But even if two wrongs don't make a right, and that's a simple way of saying it.
No, it's true, too. It's absolutely true.
So I think, with Clayton, this happening to him after The Bachelor, his experience being a public figure influences it in many ways. And it's an interesting story because, hey, it sounds like he's not the only one that it happens to. So it's valuable.
I just want to kind of make a point.
I love your points.
Thank you. I just want to kind of make a point that a lot of times we don't really, I think we don't consider what goes into producing a reality TV show. And so I feel like it's possible, which I wasn't there, but I feel like it's possible that some of the editing, you have to consider the editing, you have to consider what did they make it look like that maybe it wasn't. I'm not saying that it wasn't real or any part of the experience wasn't real, but I'm saying that,
grain of salt, people.
It can be skewed a little bit to make him possibly look a little worse than he was, maybe. Like, I'm just saying that we should take that as a consideration.
Yeah, I'm not judging pretty much anyone based on their reality TV show performance because it's exactly that. It's a performance.
Well, that and I don't know anything about reality TV or the behind the scenes, but I do know that for me personally, I've had a bunch of networks reach out to me. They wanted me to be on their shows because they see me doing the PI stories or whatever. And they're like, but don't worry, you don't have to actually investigate. Like, we're just going to tell a good story. And as soon as they said that, I was like, now it kind of solidified, which I already knew. It was like, whatever. They just want to sell TV. And so anyways, it's just, I don't know, it kind of makes you wonder like what's actually super real. But it was nice to hear his perspective, his side of the story, and instead of just what we see on TV. So interesting.
Also, another point that you just made me think of.
Okay.
Even the reality being kind of fabricated. Like, it's not reality. Reality TV is not really reality. But
Right.
it can lead to great conversations. Like, people could have watched his Bachelor season and been like, wow, that reminds me of something my ex did, and I'm processing that now.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not saying those reactions aren't real. Like, the performances are good.
Right.
And so you can still have your feelings about his behavior on The Bachelor. We're just
Sure.
like separating it.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating industry.
I don't want to invalidate any of the other participants of the show who were affected by this in one way or another. Like, yeah, I never want to invalidate any of these women that were on his show or their feelings because, you know, it's
they're real
totally
too.
Valid. Yeah, those are real too. I just think it's really easy for us to find a villain and, you know, crucify him. Like, this is just what we're good at, you know? So I don't know. Just an interesting point of view, I guess.
Yeah, if you guys have thoughts about the whole perfect victim thing about The Bachelor.
I think that obviously everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'm curious to know what our audience thinks. We know we have a really great audience. So I don't know. I'm just curious what your thoughts are and, you know,
Yeah,
what your perspective is on it after if you've seen his season. I think it was 3 seasons ago or something like that. I don't know, 20.
yeah, he's kind of
a
a recent Bachelor, but I know I do want to see if our sleuthies are Bachelor bitches. Do they call themselves that? What do they call it? Bachelor Nation? Bachelor bitches.
Is that what it's called? Bachelor Nation?
That's what they call, I think, the world.
But what's the Bachelorette? Is it Bachelorette?
It's in the Bachelor Nation.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, because there's like Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise, and probably like 6 other shows that I don't even know about.
Oh God, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's a whole world. And I think it's like on like 6 hours a night, 3 days a week.
What?
I could be exaggerating, but they exaggerate. So I'm on brand.
Lord, okay. Whatever.
Anyway, you guys let us know what do you think about all of this. And we'll be back next week. So I want all your thoughts in between. And also, if you have stories, send us your stories.
Just keep sending them in. Like I said in the beginning, if we don't get to it or we don't reply, sometimes they go to spam or they go to another folder or something weird, or we just like didn't get to it for whatever reason because there's so many. Just please know we're not ignoring you, but just keep them coming. And we want to keep it open for everyone because we want to be a voice. We'd like to be a voice for every single person. So, yeah. And then join the Patreon. But email us, investigate@thedatingdetectivespodcast.com.
Nailed it. Put the subject, make the subject kind of detailed too when you write your story.
Yeah, don't be like, I got dogfished.
Yeah, that part we're like, we can figure that out.
Be like fake pregnancy
ex-bachelor.
So yeah, something like that. Like, be real specific.
If you have the specific story of a fake pregnancy and you were also on The Bachelor and you're not Clayton, that would blow my dang mind. But
I know, right?
Let us know.
Okay, send them in. We love you guys, and
we love you as always. Trust your intuition. Oh, that was kind of sensual the way you said that. It was like a late night
really
chat line.
So sexy.